Welcome to the Cleaning Up Business Podcast. My name's Chris Guilfoyle and I'm going to be your host. In every episode, we're hoping to bring you industry leaders from a wide variety of service sectors, disruptors within their industry, and day-to-day entrepreneurs with some business and life lessons for you guys to take away. Let's jump in to today's episode. So tell me a little bit about the early days of Cleanology.
I was working something like 100, 120 hours a week.
Wow. That
week we dismissed, I think, 100 people. And she's like, we've made more money in 1 month than we did in the whole year. And for me, that was just like a really big moment. Coming up one day and said, oh, I've had enough of cleaning. Do you want to buy the business? And I was like, yeah, okay. I'm not going to pay you a lot for it. Oh my God, we actually won it. I was like, we never win anything. What happened? And sometimes you do have to be prepared to walk away from business. You have to prepare to say no. We're not having a startup in every single city. Sometimes you get into these situations, like, I don't know how I ever got through that. Will I be here forever? I don't know. Probably not forever.
We should have done that a little bit sooner. Do you think we've missed the boat? Welcome back to another episode of the Cleaning Up Business Podcast. Today I have another fantastic guest. I have the CEO and co-founder of Cleanology, which was founded in 1999, a member of the Living Wage Foundation and panel member of the All Parliamentary Group for Cleaning and Hygiene. Today I have Dominic Ponniah with me on the show. Dominic, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Chris.
No problem. So, as with all of our guests, what we do at first, we urge you to go all the way back to the start before you even started Cleanology. Just tell me a little bit about yourself and your journey up until before you started Cleanology.
Okay, well, I left uni. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was involved in a few other businesses before Cleanology. So my first business was a waste paper exporting business. So we used to export paper from Europe to Asia, which is where it was recycled. But the exchange rate wasn't very good at the time, and the business kind of took a natural decline, and I folded it. It was a bit annoying because I later found out the richest woman in China is a waste paper recycler who's a multi-billionaire. I missed my opportunity on that one. And then I had a web design business, which was successful, but didn't really make that much money. So I gave that up as well. And then I started a motorized rickshaw business, which was my sort of like big triumph, first big triumph.
Is that like the motorised rickshaws that you see going around Soho and things like that?
No, so those are the cycle ones. So
okay.
These are the ones that you find in India or Thailand.
Oh, wow.
So the motorised ones.
Yeah.
So we ran that in Brighton for 2 years.
Yeah.
Launched it in 2006, and I was working something like 100, 120 hours a week.
Wow.
I was actually sort of running Cleanology at that time as well, like sort of Monday to Thursday.
Yeah.
And then I worked weekends down there, but this was like a 7-day-a-week business, which ran from 8 in the morning till 2 in the morning. And I would basically sleep between 2 and 8, and then start again. And it took me about 6 months to recover just from that experience. But in the end, it just closed because we wanted to run it in London, and we couldn't get it licensed in London because the Mayor of London would have had to take on the taxi lobby, which he wasn't prepared to do at the time, Ken Livingstone, and so I gave that up, and I'd lost a lot of money on that project, 6-figure sum. Wow! So it was quite painful. And then Cleanology.
Just quickly to lose it, because how did that affect you? Did that make you nervous in terms of starting something else when you have a financial burden like that?
It did, and I kind of thought I would never be able to pay it back, and that was always a bit like, I'm going to have that over me for the rest of my life. Yeah. I have paid it back, thankfully, but it was quite
worrying time.
It was quite stressful.
I can imagine.
Going into something else and then effectively, spending more money. You're basically in debt before you've started. So
must have been tougher.
It was quite a tough time. So then I got involved in Cleanology, and I kind of fell into it by accident. Okay. As most people do in this industry.
That's a recurring theme in this industry, I can assure you.
You get in and you get out,
sure.
Which is what my mother did, or you get in and you stay in and you never leave, which is where I ended up. So my mother got involved in it also by accident. She had a friend actually who was going to, who had a cleaning business, who was going to retire. And then that kind of fell through, and ended up not retiring and keeping the business. And then my mother had an opportunity to quote for a contract, and not expecting to win it. She won it, and she kind of just ran that as a small home business hobby for 4 years. We had one cleaner, one client. And then I left uni, and then she said, "Oh, can you help me do some marketing and get onto, Google and all this kind of thing?" And so I said, "Sure, why not? I've got a few other things going on, but I can give you a bit of help." Yeah. So I think we're about the third company on Google, paying about 10 or 20p a click.
It's a lot more than that now.
I think we're about 80 quid a click now.
Yeah, probably.
So yeah, it's gone up a lot. But back then, that was when it first started. And the business kind of really just grew from that, actually. It really just grew from Google. Yeah. And yeah, the rest is history, as they say.
So how old was you when you got involved with Mum at Cleanology?
How old was I?
Yeah.
I was about 23, 24.
Okay, so relatively young.
Yeah, relatively young. And then I launched the other business sort of 2 years later, but I had Cleanology running at the same time. Okay. But then in 2008, I kind of gave up all the other stuff and focused just on Cleanology. So my kind of full-time Cleanology period was 2008 onwards. Okay.
Was it called Cleanology from the start? Did Mum call that, or was that you? Or
it wasn't actually. It was called something else. It was called Cream Cleaning Services, which is like a really funny name. I don't know where we even got that from, but we gave that up after about 4 years, and then we launched it as Cleanology. Yeah. So yeah.
Take me through. You mentioned about getting into the industry, and a lot of people never leave it. And a similar story to me. I'd done exactly the same. Tell me a little bit about that start, the early days of Cleanology. So obviously, you're working with Mum, and we'll come on to that. That'll be interesting to know how that dynamic worked and how that ended, or if that's still ongoing. So tell me a little bit about the early days of Cleanology. You started with one commercial contract. What was the process for sort of building that slowly?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of look back and you remember, or you sort of forget, and then you remember how hard it was in those days with nothing to rely on in terms of like no case studies, no references, literally like, "Hi, I'm going to do a great job for you." Yeah. And trying to persuade a client to go with you. So it was very hard. I mean, in the early days, I used to kind of get up 4 or 5 in the morning, kind of do payroll and kind of admin. Then I used to get ready, go out and do sales meetings. Then I come back and do kind of finance, billing, place orders. And then I go out in the evening again and see, see the cleaners and do quality orders and checks and things. So I kind of did everything in those days. In terms of kind of winning business, most of it kind of came inbound from the internet. So we would produce quotes, and for the first 10, I think we won one of them. Okay. And we were just completely out on pricing. I had literally no idea how to price anything. I was going around and I was like, there are 4 radiators, it'll probably take me about a minute to clean each one. And I was going, and it was just like, it was a total car crash. Yeah. And now you just never ever do it in that way. So yeah, I had no idea how to do anything. I had to teach myself everything from the beginning.
It's interesting, that's how not a lot of companies do that. They do a lot of outbound marketing early days, and they're going around and seeing people. But you sounded like you relied quite heavily on the internet and technology early on, which not a lot of cleaning companies do. We rely a lot on inbound marketing. Do you still invest a lot in that now, in terms of your website and people coming to you rather than?
Yeah, we I mean, our website's got a 20-year history, so it's quite well recognized on Google. But we spend a lot of money on Google, 6-figure sum a year. Okay. So we still do a lot of advertising. I would say we probably get half and half inbound and half outbound. Yeah. And a lot more referral now than ever.
With existing clients?
Existing clients will just, we heard of you through someone, and that kind of thing. Yeah. Whereas we never had that at the beginning. It was all inbound. I never made any outbound sales calls.
And you were totally responsible for all that marketing, all the marketing stuff. You didn't have someone, helping you with that. You was doing that.
Did everything.
Oh, that's really good that you've got that in-house knowledge, because to be honest with you, we outsource someone else that's SEO specialist or PPC or whatever it may be.
I used to go on every morning.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't say this, but I used to go on every morning and like go and look at all our competitors.
Yeah.
And click on all their things and outbid them.
Yeah.
And then they disappeared for the day, and then we'd still be there.
So you obviously, there seems like there was a relationship with your mum. Tell me a little bit about that. Is she still part of the business? What happened with that particular scenario? Is she still?
She's not part of the business.
Yeah.
So she was involved for probably about a year or so after I got involved. She would, help me, and we'd kind of work together. We worked together very well. But I think in the end, once we got to about 10 employees, it was just
too much.
It was no longer a sort of part-time job. She used to go every Saturday morning and see the cleaner, give him his wages, and check all the cleaning and all that kind of thing. And then suddenly you have to do stuff at all times of the day, every day. And it was no longer sort of just a bit of fun. Became a bit more serious. So we kind of had a discussion around, you're either in or you're out. I can't keep just telling you every week what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm only going to tell you if you need to know.
Sure.
I've got too much to do, too much to worry about to sit and brief you. So you need to decide if you're going to be in or out.
Yeah.
She decided to
be out.
Yeah.
Early days, I found myself being involved quite heavily in terms of operations. By the way that you're telling your story, it sounds like you were quite fortunate, and was you involved early operations? And what I mean by that is early days, people start an SME, they're in the business, as we say, as much of a cliche as it is. Did you have to get involved operationally much and actually be out on the shop floor with the cleaning staff as you started to grow, or was you quite fortunate that you'd had the right people in place so that you avoided that from the off?
No, I did all of that.
You did? Yeah.
I did all of that. So I would go out. I gave you earlier the sort of example of a typical day, but I would also go out early in the morning. And to be honest, for the first 10 years, I would say I was out pretty much every morning at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Seeing our cleaners, checking sites, until we had, probably about 7 or 8 area managers.
Yeah.
I would still go out. I would send them photos every morning, be a pain in the neck to them, I'm sure. And say, I've been to one of the sites, I found all this dust, can you sort it out? Because, if I find it before the client does, that's a good thing, right?
Proactive rather than reactive, right?
Exactly. And I used to, every cleaner that started, I would go and train them and, work with them. And I'd normally do the first shift with them, and then I'd come back and see them.
Yeah.
And then I used to do all the kind of specialist cleans. So carpet cleans, floor buffing. Every Saturday I used to go and work.
You go do that.
Sorry?
You'd go out and do that?
Yeah, every Saturday I'd take a team. Sometimes, I think the biggest team I ever took was 30. Oh, wow. That was like a massive job over the whole weekend. Bank holidays. I remember one of our clients now has been with us for 16 years. The relationship now, they're in our sort of top 10, sort of 6-figure sum. And the first time I ever met them, was to go on a bank holiday Monday in May and go and clean all their chairs in their conference venue. And I enjoyed it. I never had an issue with doing that. And I kind of thought I need to know what I'm selling and what I'm doing. Like if I'm not doing it myself, how can I possibly understand how long things take and explaining the challenges to a client. And I think probably that's also helped us with our success, is to say, look, I know what I'm talking about because I've done it and I've been a cleaner and I've done all the specialist jobs. I've done everything in this company, and there's nothing in this building that no one has done.
I find a lot of founders, they have to be involved early days, and nearly everyone we spoke to. And I think that's the only, like you say, Dominic, the only real way you can learn your business is from the bottom up, isn't it? Making sure that you understand the operations, what goes on, the challenges that your guys are facing, so that you can, one, educate staff, educate clients as well, and then deliver the service because you know what needs doing.
You know what's involved, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about the journey of Cleanology up until today. Was there any real pivotal moments within that journey that you can recall, or was it just, steady? Because for us, we've been going 8 years now. The first 4 years were relatively steady, good growth year on year. And then as you start to scale and get bigger, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So tell me a little bit about that Cleanology journey and sort of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, I remember our sort of first big name client was Pizza Hut. And I was actually I was visiting some prisoners in Brixton Prison last week and telling them about this story. and saying that, you've got to use whatever you've got to get you to the next level. So, it sounds great, you're cleaning for Pizza Hut, big international company, but actually no one knows that it was just like a local pizza joint in Pimlico, which is like about this big. But that was our sort of first big name, and I leveraged that a lot. I used to tell people, we work for people like Pizza Hut, and everyone's like, oh, wow, that sounds good. And no one had to know that it was like,
one store,
a rundown pizza joint, which was, like that. So that was our sort of first big break. And on the back of that, we won a whole load of business, which was great. And then, we've had lots of big moments. I suppose 2008, when I kind of got into it full time properly, is when we won a few kind of big contracts. So, sort of at the time, and there were very big contracts for us, sort of 50 to 100,000 a year type contracts, and that kind of took us through the million barrier, which was a big moment for us.
What year? When was that? How long into your journey was that? Can you remember?
It was about 2009, 10, I think, but we won those contracts sort of end of 2008.
Yeah.
And then 2009, 10, you'd
realise the revenue.
We broke the million barrier, which was like a big moment, as it was when we hit 10 million. So, you have those sort of moments, don't you? You sort of like, want to go from 1 to 5 to 10 and, and all that. But, so those are big moments. And I think in terms of people, I can remember when we had an ops director who was very good, and he left us. I think it was 2015 or something like that. And I can remember that time when he said, I need to talk to you. And I thought, here we go. I think he's going to resign. That dreaded moment. Can I have 5 minutes with you? And he's like, I'm going to leave. And I was like, why? What's going on? And for me, that was just like a really big moment when I thought, what, I need to like review everything what I'm doing and really to kind of take stock, because we'd spent a lot of time and money and invested in somebody who I thought was really good, and they were very good. And I kind of thought we're obviously doing something wrong, and
to not retain that person.
And we can't keep losing good people like that, because it's hard to get good people. So when you lose them, it's a real blow. So that was the moment really that we got, that I really kind of decided, okay, we're going to have, I think at that point we're actually about 5 million. And I sort of said, do you know what, I feel like I'm drifting a bit, and I kind of, we're doing okay, and we're sort of like, we've grown, but I kind of feel like I need a plan. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have a chat to a few people I know in the industry and just like see what people think. And just get a bit of use people as a bit of a sounding board. And then we kind of put together a plan. So first part was to bring in a non-exec, and that was quite a big moment for us, because that kind of made us a bit more corporate, and there's a bit more scrutiny, I'd say, on what we're doing.
Someone independent that can come in and question, has got no relationship within the business at the moment.
They don't know anything apart from what you tell them once a month.
And they give you them difficult questions that you need to answer, right, to enable to scale.
Yeah, exactly. And that was the big moment, because that was kind of really what took us to, we sort of said at that point, okay, we're at 5 million. I want to go from 5 to 10 in 3 years, which we did actually. And I think because we sort of made all decisions around that growth process. So we said, right, we've got 3 years. What do we want to do to get there in 3 years? If we spend money on this, this, and this, is that going to help? No, it's not. Don't do it. Everything, all the decision making was then around that focus. So having that focus was really good. And that was a big moment for us.
I think it's interesting you said that about getting someone independent, in to ask them tough questions. And I think us in our business journey, we're nowhere near the Cleanology size, and it's interesting you said that, you had to pause for a second and just take a little bit of stock to say, well, okay, why have we lost, a good employee, and where do we go moving forward? So sometimes taking a couple of steps back to then move forward is something that, a lot of businesses, it's a reoccurring thing that comes up in the podcast, and that a lot of people have said. So that non-exec piece, would you say that was a real pivotal moment within the business and changed where you were going? Is that something you still have in place at the moment?
It is something we still have in place. We've had a couple of changes since, but actually the people we've had have been A, very good, and B, have lasted quite a long time. And Obviously for different reasons, they've sort of moved on. But typically, my understanding is that non-execs will stay, a year or two, and actually ours have stayed 3 or 4.
Wow.
Which is good. I mean, there's no reason for them to not be there, kind of thing. So, which I suppose is good because we valued what they've brought to the table, and hopefully they've got something out of it as well, and have learned something.
So the growth between 0 to 5 million is sort of one aspect. Obviously, I'm assuming the rest of that growth isn't through PPC and contracts like that, some of the bigger contracts that you get now. So did you get a sales team? Did you start to get a sales team in, or was you still really heavily involved in the business development aspect of the business through that latter part of growth?
Yeah, so I've been involved. I mean, I used to do all the sales, obviously at the beginning. Up until sort of 2018 maybe.
Okay.
And so
it's still relatively recent. Then.
Yeah, it is quite recent. Yeah. And I used to do quite a lot. So we have had BDMs, we've had sales directors. I mean, anyone in the industry will tell you recruiting for somebody good in sales is like one of the hardest roles.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very, very difficult. And yeah, I did most of the sales. Most of it was inbound.
Okay.
We did also an acquisition in 2013. So we went from about we were about 3 million at that point in 2013. And it was a company that was in a bit of distress. They were kind of run out of money. Right. So we took them over, and that gave us about £1 million worth of business. So it was quite big for us at that time.
Yeah.
And I remember that was a really weird moment, because I remember our finance manager came into me one day and she says, "You need to have a look at this. You need to have a look at this." I'm like, "What is it? What is it?" And she's like, "We've made more money in 1 month than we did in the whole year." And I'm like,
"Lovely."
I know. I was like, "What? What do you mean? Show me." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing." So I can't believe it. And it was really weird. It was a really weird moment. And I think it's just, we had all the infrastructure and all the, everything we needed basically to run that business, whether it was 3 million, 4 million or 5 million. So anything we added on was really just going to the bottom line. And that really helped us get us to the next level. Yeah.
Did you not, I didn't know that. So that's an interesting process. Did that not become a business? Because some people, they acquire one business and then they've got the business function, so they've got HR, they've got their payroll all in-house already, so they don't have to take that function from the other business, so they can effectively, bring that in-house. Was that tempting to become a business strategy then, to just acquire more businesses to then give you the growth you needed? Or was it, you went through that process and thought, well, actually, it's not? I was, so kind of 2010, 2011, I kind of thought, we were doing quite well organically, but I always thought, if we're going to grow really quickly, we've got to do some kind of acquisitions, because otherwise, I'm quite impatient, so I like to get on with it, get going. So I thought it will speed things up a bit, and I thought they might also bring up some interesting opportunities along the way. You never know what you're going to come up against. So I was always looking, but trying to find something is really difficult. Okay. Anyone doing an acquisition will tell you that they're not easy to get the right fit. So you want the right geography, the right type of clients. There's a whole lot of things you want, and trying to get everything. It's like buying a house. You just never get everything. You can't get everything
you want. So this opportunity came along, and I thought, it's not really going to cost us very much. In fact, anything at all. So we're gonna do this deal. And that actually was really, really successful for us. And we did 2 years later a small acquisition in Manchester. So we had a client who had an office in Manchester, and they said, can you please take this on for us? We were only London, and I always swore we'd never ever leave London. I was like, there's enough business in London to once we saturated London, we'll worry about the rest of the country. And anyway, he persuaded me to take this on, and he's like, "Oh, look, just sub it out, charge me a management fee." And I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll do it." So I went out to Manchester, met all these companies. I think 3 out of 5 turned up on the day. So I was already down to 3. Yeah. Then I got the quotes. One of the quotes never bothered coming in. The other one was ridiculous. And then one guy sent me the quote. So I kind of felt like I had to beg this guy to take it on.
Please.
But I also thought, actually, that's also an opportunity in Manchester, which we can maybe talk about. But so anyway, this guy took it on. He was an architect by trade. And he had a small business. It was like doing 300K a year or something. And he said, phoned me up one day and said, "Oh, I've had enough of cleaning. Do you want to buy the business?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay. I'm not going to pay you a lot for it, but I'll take it off you."
Yeah.
And then we were in Manchester, and then kind of Manchester just grew. And a lot of our clients, you see a lot of companies now moving up to Manchester.
Yeah, it seems quite a popular part of the country now, doesn't it?
It is. And a lot of people have, an office up there and one here or a restaurant or whatever it is. So Manchester's been a really good success story for us.
So obviously, the size you guys are now, you must have, a fair load of people on the ground delivering, and you've obviously got in your new office that we're in today, which is fantastic. Again, thank you for having us here. You've obviously got a lot of staff. What's the process of sort of managing those staff? Tell me a little bit about that, what infrastructure you need to manage such a large workforce that you need in a business your size, predominantly because we're labour-based business as well. So tell me a little bit about the structure you've got there.
So we've got a field-based team.
Okay.
And then we've got the sort of head office team, essentially. So they look after finance, HR, payroll, obviously sales, and the senior operational team are all based in the office, of which there are about 50. And then we have the operational team who are area managers, regional managers and so on. So they tend to be mostly out on site.
Out and about on site managing the team. Yeah. Yeah. Do you find that a difficult part? Obviously, you've got a large management structure here. You're the CEO of this business. Is that difficult to manage lots of different people at scale when you're as big as you guys are? Do you find that difficult, or do you enjoy it?
I do enjoy it most of the time.
when people are not bringing you problems.
Yeah, no, exactly. Bring me solutions, not problems. I do enjoy it, but it is hard, especially more recently when we've become more national and remote, because we've got, when you're sort of all together, and that's partly why we moved. And we were sort of on different levels in two different buildings, and it was quite hard to communicate internally. Right. So we decided to move so that everyone could be on one open plan office, which actually has been a lot better. More successful than I thought it was going to be, because there's a lot of people who are a bit like,
don't know about that.
We're going to get watched and all this kind of thing, and also like just the noise levels.
Yeah, sure.
But actually, it's been okay. But managing people remotely is quite hard, and I think making people, our team in Scotland and the Midlands and Manchester, making them feel part of the team is really hard. Yeah, and I don't think we've got that right yet.
No, it must be super difficult. Being that spread out in terms of geography. It must be hard to manage. And to say, I wondered if you enjoyed that, because I think that's an area for me that I need to improve on in terms of higher level management and that interaction there. And as I say, especially with the move to working remotely that COVID introduced, not a lot. They're not in the office as much as maybe, because a lot of our stuff is done out on site. I say we're still an SME, but I sort of wondered how you guys done that. The national move, was the Manchester part, was that a pivotal piece within that to say, right, actually, we're comfortable where we are in London now. We've acquired this business up in Manchester. Actually, let's have a go at servicing customers up and down the UK. Was that a pivotal moment there?
Manchester was kind of like our backbone, I suppose. And from Manchester, we ran Leeds, Birmingham. Yeah. We kind of fell into the national bit by accident. Okay. So we had clients who basically said, look, we've got an office in Edinburgh, Glasgow and Bristol and everywhere. Again, will you take it on? And we're like, no, please don't, we don't want to do it. And then we just got more and more clients asking us for it. And we're like, do you know what? We're actually going to have to do this. Yeah. And I think we kind of just got to that size where we're just like, well, we're working with bigger companies and they're just more national or international in profile. Yeah. And if you kind of say no, you'll end up losing what you've got in London. Yeah. So it's been like having a startup in every single city. Mm. So interesting. Yeah, it's been hard because you haven't got any of the infrastructure. Yeah. So coming back to this thing earlier about managing people, it's managing people remotely, and it's also like making them feel part of the team and maintaining the culture. Yeah. And trying to do that remotely is quite hard. But we did go national last year, sort of officially. Yeah. Before that, we were sort of like a little bit sporadic, but we added, I think it was 14 new cities in a year. Yeah. Which is a lot.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine.
Last year was just absolutely crazy.
I couldn't imagine that, let's say, effectively, like you say, if you're going to a new city, you've got the knowledge and some of the infrastructure down at HQ here in London, but you're effectively starting over again. You've got to get the right management team. That must be tough and must have been a challenge and tiring at times, I imagine. But is it rewarding being able to support customers at multi-sites?
Yeah, it is, absolutely. And it's great when you're working with a customer, throughout their whole business, because if you've got 10 different offices in 10 cities, then, it's great to be able to have, for them, they love it because they have one company that does everything and they get it across the business. So I think for many of them, they wanted that consistency.
Yeah.
We were asked to cover Singapore and Belgium last year.
No desire to go international?
I declined both.
Yeah. Well, Singapore, I don't know, that might have twisted my arm, to be honest, because that's a lovely place, isn't it?
Maybe next year.
Yeah, when you've had a break and recovered. So you've obviously done fantastic with the growth of Cleanology, and you continue to grow. One thing that we always ask all of our guests, it's very glamorized on social media that business is so fantastic, and it's always plain sailing. It's £100,000 in 6 weeks, or whatever these guys say on social media today. Tell me, is there a particular point, and say, I'll try not to go to COVID because that's most recent and everyone goes there. Was there a particular point in your Cleanology journey that the moment that you can remember that was particularly a difficult period to get through, or that you can recall, or has it been pretty, plain sailing?
No, it's not been plain sailing. I've had a lot of
ups and downs,
a lot of tough moments. And, I don't know, sometimes you get into these situations, I don't know how I ever got through that.
Yeah.
But there have been a lot of moments. I suppose a couple I'll share with you. One financially, I think we nearly run out of money like 3 times. And I think most businesses, when they're small, get that. And I think, as you grow, you're spending money, you're always kind of having to spend money to grow. So the sort of financial side is always difficult. I would say sort of sub $1 million is probably the hardest, actually. Sort of maybe sub 3 million is the hardest, and probably gets a bit easier as you get.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm getting there.
But it depends also, I've never taken out, every bit of profit the company makes. I've always tried to reinvest it. Yeah. So we've always tried to be quite cautious like that, which has helped. And I think, there's another moment when we moved into our last office about 8 years ago. I think we're about a year in, and I think we had 7 area managers at the time. And I don't know what happened. There was some kind of moment/meltdown, and we ended up from, I think, 6 or 7 area managers to 2. Wow. And I just thought, oh my God, how am I going to manage this business? Sure. I literally cannot be everywhere. I will roll up my sleeves and do whatever's needed, but I actually don't know how I'm going to get through this. Yeah. And there were moments in a week or 2 that I thought, actually, the whole business might just collapse. And as I say, a couple of them kind of left and resigned. One went on holiday and never came back. And there's just a whole load of disasters that happened all at once. But you are reliant on your people. You are reliant on your team. Key, isn't it? I think people and money are the 2 biggest things that are, and it's quite a kind of boring answer, but I think people and money are always the 2 things that either make or break. And I think, even looking at some of the current team, I said recently on an interview I did that if I had some of the current people I've got, if I had them 20 years ago, we'd be double the size we are now. Yeah. And it is just down to people.
Shows how fundamental that having the right people. It's so important.
It just makes such a big difference. Yeah. And talking about the sales piece, Stephen, our sales director, is fantastic, and so I hardly get involved with the sales at all anymore. But you get you go through sort of cycles, don't you? You get sort of periods when you've got a brilliant person there, not a great person there, and if you get all of those moving parts correct at the same time, that's when you really just fly. Yeah,
you've got to have the right team in place, and that's again a recurring theme that a lot of founders and CEOs have come to. So on the flip side of that, is there a moment within the journey where you think, that really stands out as being, a fantastic achievement, and you actually took the time, because not a lot of founders do, took the time to sit back and reflect on that particular moment that you can recall, a real positive and good time that you can remember?
I mean, there've been lots of highs, I suppose. There are those moments when you win, an amazing contract, or you win something that you didn't think you were going to win.
Like these raft of awards that are sitting behind us.
Well, yeah. Well, the awards separately. I mean, we have won a lot of awards. Yeah. We sat out a couple recently. We thought we need to let someone else have a chance.
Someone else have a go.
But when we won our first award, it's funny because when we first started, I remember I had these sort of role model businesses that I looked up to, and I thought, God, they got that amazing contract, the Royal Opera House, whatever it was, and I was like, I wish we would be like them one day. And how did they win that award? Like, what do they do to do it? And now we sit there with all our awards.
Now you can tell me.
But the first one we won, I was just like, oh my God, we actually won it. I was like, we never win anything. What happened? And we did go crazy that day. We invited the whole company down, and we had a massive party at the Hilton with 30 of us. Yeah. But yeah, winning awards is fantastic, and I think just the recognition and the independent kind of validation that you're doing things right is really good. But also you winning contracts are big highs. There are some, without naming particular clients, but there are some that you really think, I really want to win that, and you get it. And actually, from a talent point of view, it's competitive as well. So when you get somebody on board and you're like, that's fantastic. I really want them to come and work for us. Those are really good moments as well. I
say, especially in such a competitive industry, which the cleaning industry is. We discussed off camera about how competitive it is and how many companies there are that start up. So as I say, getting good people and getting them contracts, and they're probably some of the pivotal. We've had some revenue goals that we've hit, and you think, oh, fantastic, I got to there, but then you straight away you're on to the next revenue target. So meeting them goals is always good. Do you move on from that quickly though? Do you find it becomes a distant memory pretty quick, some of them wins?
I mean, you're always kind of moving on, aren't you, to the next challenge, the next problem, or the next win. But I think that there are some moments that stick out, and that will always that will always stick out. I mean, I remember when we did that, we did the first acquisition, and the team worked really hard on that. It was like a real slog. And I took them all the way to the senior team, the guys that were involved the most. I took them away, and I say senior team, there was only about 4 in the entire team actually. Took them all to Barcelona for a couple of nights, and fantastic. It was just a really special moment, a really, really nice moment. And actually, we got back, and I was like, do you know what? I think we're going to end up doing that again. And then we've done, I think, another 7 trips since then.
That's a regular thing now.
Yeah, so now it's a regular thing.
Yeah. So what's next for Cleanology? What's the end goal of it for you personally as the founder and CEO? Is it continue growing it and just be part of it forever? Is it to move it towards acquisition at the end of the year? What's the strategy? Or is it, you don't know that at the moment, just going to carry on what we're doing?
So we're about 25 million at the moment, and the plan is to get to about 50 in the next 3 years. I think, I don't know what will happen at that point. We'll take stock and see. But what I like doing is having kind of 3 to 5 year goals and plans. You kind of get to that point, and once you get to that point, you sort of decide, actually, I might feel different about it then, to how I did 3 years ago. So, when I was 5 million, I was like, I'm going to get to 10 million, then I'm going to sell it. And obviously, here we are, 25, and I'm like, I'm nowhere near selling it. So, I mean, will I be here forever? I don't know, probably not forever. The kids want to, one of my kids wants to work in the business. But I said to them, no, they're going to have to make their own way in life.
Well, that's not a bad thing to do, is it?
I don't want them to have it too easy. I want them to try and work for it and understand what it takes to do it. I think for us, for the next few years, the focus is really building the national business. So we're obviously very strong in London and the Northwest, but we want to grow in Scotland, Midlands, Southwest.
Start taking over some of the rest of the country.
Yeah.
So let's move on to you outside of Cleanology and some of the stuff you do there, because you are one of the, and that's the reason why we wanted you on the podcast. I think you're one of the companies that do your PR, social very well. Obviously, we've got the trophy behind us. You're part of the Real Living Wage Foundation, and I believe that's from stuff I see for you on social. That's something you're quite passionate about. How did you get involved in that, and why are you such a big advocate of the Real Living Wage for staff?
So we are very big advocates of the Real Living Wage. We first came across it more than 10 years ago by one of our clients said to us, have you heard about this living wage? It's something that we'd like to sign up to, and I'd never heard of it. We agreed to pay the cleaning staff more, higher rate. And then the retention at that particular site went from like 50-60% to like over 90%. In fact, the 3 cleaners I worked there didn't leave for like 4 years. Wow. And then we decided, actually, do you know what? We're going to look at rolling this out, at other sites. So we started, as I said, more than 10 years ago, and we've been actually working with our clients to implement it across the business ever since. We only accredited, I think, about 5 years ago with the Living Wage Foundation, and that was kind of to make it all official. But before that, we had, we'd been doing it for years, as I say. And I think there's lots of reasons why you'd pay it. I think obviously morally it's the right thing to do. I think commercially you've got to sell it to people, don't you? You've got to sell it to clients and say, you're going to pay, and it's quite a lot more, 25% more. Yeah. What is the business benefit of doing it? Well, the business benefit is totally straightforward. The cleaning staff have got no reason to leave because no one's going to pay them, much more or any more. So you get the consistency, you get the staff retention, and then you get the cleaning standards because you've got that consistency.
And that's a key, isn't it? But on continuity of service, not having that turnover of staff all the time is something that we struggle with as an SME. Getting the right people in place, and we're not part of the Real Living Wage Foundation like Cleanology is, but we try and make sure we pay that. And we discussed off camera. I think the market's going that way to try and find staff for minimum wage now is not. I'd be close to impossible. So it's definitely something that most businesses should have within the cleaning industry, and I'd encourage that. Do you find it difficult to educate and change the staff, the clients' opinions of that? Because some customers, they want a service for the cheapest possible price they can. How do you go about educating a customer on that particular piece?
Well, first of all, I'm going to get you signed up to the Living Wage Foundation.
It's something we've considered. We just haven't done it, and we do it back of house. And to be fair, it's difficult enough even trying to find people with the real living wage at the moment, let alone anything sub that. So we are trying to move all of our contracts to that. I say we're not part of the foundation, and it's something we can happily discuss because it's a nice to have. It shows you value your staff, but trying to educate customers in terms of that when they've got a 25% increase or whatever it may be to get to that is difficult.
It's really hard, and we have. We're sort of lucky in that we can afford to basically say no to business, and we have done. Last year, there were a couple of big hospitality businesses that and I knew they were going to be difficult about paying the extra money, and it was a big jump for them. But I immediately said, look, guys, I'm sorry, I'm not interested in running it and having my team flat out just dealing with a churn of staff, because basically you don't want to pay the right money to deliver the job. So we basically said, look, it's that or nothing. And a couple of them went away and came back. And sometimes you do have to be prepared to walk away from business. You have to be able to prepare to say no. But I think if you can make the business case for it and say, look, we're in 2023, this is the reality of today. 5 years ago, okay, it's a different story. But now, if you don't pay this money, you will not get what you want. So it's like, you can't have, my old saying, you can't have a Ferrari for the price of a Ford. No. If you want the best, you've got to pay for it.
Yeah. And if you don't want staff missing cleans or whatever, and you want that standard, I think it's an absolute necessity for any cleaning business now to be moving towards the living wage. And it makes perfect sense. I think, as I say, we can't even recruit for anything below that now, to be honest. So, it's difficult educating customers. Some get it, some will always have that, the attitude of, well, I'll get it cheaper elsewhere. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, having the gumption to say, actually, well, it's not for us then.
Yeah.
And turn business down. The problem you find is SMEs, we mentioned that, we mentioned that again off camera, a lot of companies don't have more than 10 employees. So they're going to be hungry for the revenue. So there's always going to be someone that does it cheaper, but just holding your line is the way we do that, but we've got to do it collectively.
And no, exactly, as an industry, we need to say like, this is our bottom line. And if enough people do it, and I think we're sort of almost at that tipping point where, enough companies do it, then, people will be like, okay, fine, then I understand that's the minimum. It becomes the new norm, sure. Exactly. But you've got some sectors that are particularly difficult. I think retail and hospitality are particularly difficult. They don't really get it. I think a lot of their staff get, or a minimum wage, but they get tips. It's a different job, and B, it's a different mindset. It's a different pay structure. So, quite often they say, oh, our staff don't get it. So how can your staff? It's like, you can't compare the cleaner with the person working in the retail store or, the receptionist. It's a different job.
Totally different industry, and different values, and that's what segues me nicely into the next question. We try and steer away from COVID, although it was a pivotal moment in the world, let alone the cleaning industry. You've obviously been quite heavily involved in that with your involvement with the All Parliamentary Party group. Tell me a little bit about COVID for Cleanology, firstly. How was that for you? Because most people have the perception, you as a cleaning company, you must have been raking it in. But the reality is, if you've got this office and no one's coming into the office,
We did rake it in for about a week.
Yeah. And then your revenue fell off a cliff. That's what a lot of people don't. So how did you guys manage that? How was that for you guys?
So we just won actually the Golden Service Awards for the second time, and everything was great. And, they were just starting to do the old Wuhan handshake and all that.
And then we called that. That's great. The Wuhan, the elbow.
The Wuhan handshake, yeah. And then we had Sky News phone us up and say, we're doing a piece on COVID. Can we come down and film? And within about 45 minutes, they were there, filming. And I think 2 days later, I think it was on the Wednesday, and then on the Friday, I was literally, I want to just turn my phone off on my laptop. I never ever want to open it again. I was like, I cannot take another phone call from another client saying we're going to stop the cleaning or we're leaving the office. We don't know when we're coming back. It was like some kind of like the end of the world.
Yeah, it was crazy.
It was crazy. And so basically the following week, we just spent the entire week, and I had like the entire team in 12-hour meetings till like 8-9 o'clock at night, just going through like every customer, what was going on. And we had to, that week we dismissed, I think, 100 people who we later brought back on furlough, but it hadn't been announced then. Yeah. And I was like, look, we're going to have to do what it takes to survive. I was like, I can't have 100 people on the books when we haven't got, when they closed the business. Yeah. So it was a very scary time just because of the uncertainty and the speed with which it happened.
Yeah, it was quick.
And our revenues fell, I think, more than 60%, and 85% of our staff on furlough. So quite similar to a lot of companies in that respect. And then it was dead, very quiet for like 2-3 months. And then it kind of picked up. And then coming out of COVID, we lost our biggest customer at the time.
Wow. Okay.
Because we fell out over money. So they hadn't paid us for, since before COVID. Mm-hmm. And they basically said, look, we want you to come back and do these cleans for us. And I said, I'm sorry, you owe us a lot of money. Yeah. And until you paid, we're not going to come back. Yeah. And then they basically said, well, sorry, we're not going to do it. And I thought, this is kind of like where we're at now, It's it was a brutal time in some ways. There were some customers who were amazing.
Yeah, of course.
Who were really supportive and loyal. And there were others who were just like, we care about the cleaners. We cared about the cleaners a year ago, but we don't need more. Today, they're your problem.
They're gone. Yeah.
It was weird.
For me, I had a real issue with that period because customers would call me, say when, lockdown number 1, customers would call me and say, right, we're stopping service. And I had that real dichotomy of saying, right, obviously we're in a contractual agreement, Did you carry on charging customers for that time? Because I thought I had that personal thought of, I'm going to have a retention issue with customers if I enforce that I'm carrying on supplying, or did you just take that on a case-by-case basis with customers?
Yeah, that was a really difficult one. And we spoke to a lot of other companies about that and how, before we kind of, decided how we're going to do it. And we said like, well, what are you guys doing about it? Because we had exactly the same thing. We're like, how far do we, everyone has a contract, but how far do we push it?
Sure.
And we ended up doing a bit of a It's kind of case by case, really. Most people, most of the cleaners went on furlough, and then we passed on the furlough discount to the customers. So most of them got a 60% discount.
Got it.
But I don't think there were many that we didn't charge at all.
Right.
Because we still had to pay all the full-time staff. To be honest with you, everyone who was working more than they'd ever worked before.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And all the office staff, I think quite often it's very easy to think, the cleaning service is the cleaners. It's like, the cleaners do one part of it, but there's also the payroll team that have to get them paid, the finance team that send the invoices, and all the other people behind the scenes. And I think customers quite often forget that bit. So they were quite focused on the cleaners, and they're like, well, they're getting furlough, so they're fine. Never mind everyone else. So we just had a lot of one-to-one conversations, and that's what took up so much time.
Yeah. It was a absolutely crazy time, I think, for big businesses, and it's interesting to see how bigger businesses than us got through that. So we're through COVID now, thank God to everyone. Do you think it had a net positive or negative effect on our industry as a whole?
That's a very difficult question.
Or do we still don't know? We're still in the unknown.
I don't know about a net positive or negative. I think there are some positives that came out of it, and some negatives where the balance lies. I'm not quite sure. I don't think we know that yet, to be honest with you. I think on the positive side, I think there's a lot more focus on cleaning as an industry. I think people recognize it as something important, which before was like it just kind of happened. Mm-hmm. I think that people now actually care about sort of hygiene, and you go on the tube and it's just there's a lot more visibility about everything to do with cleaning and hygiene. So I think that was a positive thing. On the negative, personally, I think furlough went on for too long.
Okay.
And I think it's changed the culture of work a lot, and it's made it now really hard. COVID, not just furlough, but COVID generally has made it really hard now to recruit, because obviously we've got all the economic kind of backlash from it. Furlough has to be paid back. We're now paying for all of that free money.
Yeah, all the bounce back loans that everyone took.
But so many people, like 10% of our workforce left the country. A lot of people went off and became Amazon delivery drivers or Just Eat drivers. So a lot of people left the industry, and a lot of people retired early, never came back. So us, like every other industry, is basically short of people. There's a shortage in the workforce. Yeah. So I think that obviously can't be positive. It's a massive negative. Yeah. Some people would say it's Brexit. Some people say it's COVID. I think it's probably a bit of both. But I think that is the biggest challenge. But on the upside of that, everyone's earning more money than they ever have, because wages have gone up. So some people would say actually it's a good thing, but obviously now you've got inflation. So it's just
still undecided.
It's still undecided. Okay. Go around and around with it.
So you were fortunate enough to be part of the All Parliamentary Party group that was set up during COVID, I believe, to understand how the cleaning and hygiene industry can, help eradicate or deal with the pandemic and anything beyond that. How did you get involved in that? What was the process with that? Is it just someone come and said, right, we're setting up this group, we're going to, and we want you to come be a part of that? Tell me a little bit about that process.
That group, yes, came out of COVID, and again, I think that was a positive thing, because I think cleaning industry is a massive employer, and if you think actually as an industry what it contributes to UK PLC, it doesn't really get the parliamentary recognition that other industries do.
I totally agree.
So that was a good thing. I mean, in terms of the sort of process, some of the original kind of panel, members, I knew, and I was discussing with them about it, and I just put myself forward to let if you want me to get involved, I'm happy to do that. I think there was a lot of momentum at the beginning, but it's sort of slowed up. Okay. So I think I know the current chair is struggling a little bit in terms of getting the traction and the profile that it should have. Is that within Parliament? Yeah, within Parliament, and it kind of started off with the 2 or 3 meetings, and it was all I think we had 70 MPs signed up. It was one of the biggest parliamentary groups. But like all these things, it needs momentum, and it needs to kind of keep going. And once you lose that, it's quite difficult to get it back. So I really hope they will, because I think cleaning at the moment is kind of, again, it's not really up there. It's sort of lost lost the focus a bit that it had. Obviously, can't have the focus all the time, but it'd be good if there was some long-term kind of benefit from it. And I think there are so many things that need to be fixed, like the apprenticeship schemes and that, which now are happening. So I mean, in some ways, that's a good thing, because I know the apprenticeship whole levy thing was, it's been quite controversial, because you haven't been able to use it for cleaners and supervisors before. It's been for more senior positions, which actually is kind of pointless, really. You want to train, your core workforce. So I think that's one good thing in terms of that lobbying piece, because there's so much that needs to be done on lobbying, whatever government it is.
Do you think, for me, and this is my personal opinion, I think there seems to be a lot of effort now to, write to your local MP. I've seen Jim Melvin, the chair of the British Cleaning Council, pushing that along. I see his speech was fantastic at the cleaning show on Tuesday when it opened. And there seems to be now a real push from the industry to say, right, actually, let's start lobbying our MPs, let's start shouting about it, encouraging people to do that. Do you think we should have been making a little bit more noise during COVID to do that? Or do you what I'm aiming at is, do you think we're doing that a little bit late? We've missed the boat with that now. Now COVID is a distant memory for most people. Like, we seem to be losing a little bit of momentum. Do you think we should have, as an industry, shouted more? Yeah, started a little bit earlier with sort of banging the drum and, lobbying our local MPs. I've been to see my local MP about perception of the cleaning industry and all the stuff that the All Parliamentary group is aiming for. Do you think we should have done that a little bit sooner? Do you think we've missed the boat?
I don't think we missed the boat. I think, it would have been good if the group was set up earlier. I'm not sure logistically how it could have been because of COVID and all the things that were going on, but it's kind of a shame it wasn't there before COVID, actually, so it could have been used sort of, during. I suppose if COVID hadn't happened, we wouldn't even have a group at this stage. I suppose that's one positive thing to come out of it. But I think, Jim's a great advocate for the industry as well. So I think he will really push it for us, and I think it needs that sort of renewed, leadership and momentum. I think that there's so much to do on it. Also, the industry is a bit sort of fragmented. I find you've got the sort of BCC, and then you've got the CSSA, and with some industries there's like one organisation that speaks for everyone, but with cleaning it's not. There's sort of two or three, and it's a bit sort of fragmented like that. Okay.
Do you find? How do you think the industry could get a more collaborative approach? Because obviously, you're one of what I would say the big end of the scale in terms of, cleaning companies within the UK. How do we get a more collaborative approach between the industry? So like you say, we've got the British Cleaning Council, BICS and CSSA and all those guys. Is there a way to do that? Or is it just a case of it's so set in stone because the industry has been going this way for a very long time? Do you think there's a way we can reconcile that, or do you think it's just, we've got them fractions and they're never going to really come into one?
I don't see them all kind of coming together in terms of like one organisation, which I kind of think is a bit of a shame actually, because I think one organisation would be better, but I can't ever see that happening because everyone's got like, the rivalries and politics between it, but that's a separate thing. But I think more collaboration definitely would be a good thing. I think there's a lot of collaboration within those groups, and a lot of companies who would be competitors and rivals are members of those groups and get on very well. But outside that, it'd be good if there was more collaboration between companies. Generally, like we're talking today, but we're technically competitors, but. So it'd be good if there was a bit more, because I think we've got a lot more in common than we have
most definitely.
And we learn a lot from each other. Like as an industry, there'll be things that you do that we don't, and vice versa. So I meet quite often with at least once a month with some of our competitors. On a kind of one-to-one basis, and most of them, I know pretty well.
Yeah, which is needed, as I say, especially when you're all pulling towards that end goal, where like COVID is concerned, and getting recognition for the industry. You're not going to get a cleaning company that goes, "Oh no, I don't really fancy the recognition for our staff and us as an industry." We're all going in that direction. As I say, it's a shame sometimes it can be a little bit fragmented. But I was really pleased when that group was set up. Is it? So, what's the plans for that group? Is it still ongoing, or?
It's still ongoing, and I think there's they need to, obviously we'll see what happens with any potential change of government and things, but I think the plans are to really renew the sort of the lobbying piece in particular, and getting the recognition. But I think, also just sort of getting more people into the workforce, and potentially, I don't know, a lot of things have been talked about, issuing visas to get more people in. Because there's such a shortage of staff, but they haven't got that. The industry hasn't got that recognition in the same way that farmers have, for example. So, fruit pickers got these special dispensations. Cleaners haven't got that yet. And there's also a big movement to get key worker status.
Yes, massively.
As well. Which again, personally, I don't think they will get it, but we're trying.
The logic of that is just ludicrous, really, isn't it? Someone that's working in a hospital, doing infection control is not a key infrastructure in that hospital. The very premise of that is just crazy, isn't it? I don't see how anyone can deny that fact, Don't get me wrong, if someone's cleaning a general office or something like that, but where you've got schools, hospitals and things, and, key infrastructure like rail and things like that, the fact that how anyone could deny that the cleaner that's keeping that area clean and tidy, especially where you've got a pandemic, is not key infrastructure. Absolutely. It's just ludicrous. I just can't see how we can't gain momentum with that. But of course, dealing with government we've got at the moment and things like that, it must be super difficult. But
yeah, no, I agree. I think, it was bizarre that they never did that. I mean, we actually we gave everyone key worker status. So when we talk to our clients, we're like, no, I'm sorry, they're coming in, they're key workers. So we just ignored the official advice and went ahead with it anyway. We just thought, well, whatever, Probably I think they're key workers, key workers.
They're coming in, keep you safe. I totally agree. Yeah, it was an interesting one, COVID, and obviously, we'll keep a keen eye on that, how that moves forward. One thing I want to discuss with you is you as a personal brand. You are quite forward thinking in terms of yourself as the founder of Cleanology and, putting yourself out there in terms of PR, social media. What's your take on that in terms of, should we as the industry be doing more in terms of that to show people what we're doing? Because as you're one of the companies that we believe you do well, I see your face on social media. I see lots of articles that you write, which is fantastic. So is that a key part of your business strategy and you personally as a personal brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think messaging is really important, like how you sell your company and brand. And obviously, the world has changed a lot in terms of how that is done. Yeah. Obviously we've moved away from that traditional print. It's all pretty much online now. I quite enjoy it as well.
I do. I do.
It's sort of part of my DNA. But I think, from a Cleanology point of view, we like to talk about what we do, and we've got a lot of positive stuff to talk about. We've probably got too much content, really. And I think, to promote the industry as well as being like, a bit more exciting and fresh. And, I don't think you can ever really do too much. I think, there are some industries that, they put together very slick marketing, like, the car industry or retail or whatever. There's no reason why we can't do that as well.
We shouldn't fall into our own trap that, cleaning is not really glamorous. We won't put it out because it's not, I don't know, the banking industry or high-end fashion or whatever it may be. It's really refreshing to see another, someone at the higher end, especially, doing that. And I think you guys do it well. So, we applaud you for that. And I'd like to see more of that. I'm glad you enjoy it, because some people go, see it as a necessary evil, but you seem to enjoy it and certainly do it well. And I say, from the awards, you're obviously getting some recognition for your business, and the PR stuff is fantastic to see.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that you've got to do it all the time. If you just post once a month, it's kind of pointless, really. You've got to keep doing it all the time. It's very much part of our marketing plan and awareness.
Yeah. So one of the last points I want to, the last couple of points, is you're obviously quite a green company. You've got your electric vehicles out the front. Is that a big push that you're going towards in terms of your sustainability strategy? Tell me a little bit about that.
Our sustainability is kind of like our core, core of our business. Funnily enough, when we were moving, I found my old blue pizza badge.
Oh, really?
Which is a green one, which I won for setting up a recycling service. And I think, it's always been part of me. My favorite subject was geography. I've always been a sort of people and planet type person, and always interested in people and the way they live. And, so I think it's a lot of companies are now like, green and sustainable and like tick the box.
Yeah.
And it's quite annoying to see actually. Some of the greenwashing is just like, we've done a
post about that just recently, about companies that shout green credentials, but really, I mean, I won't go into the details of it here, but they
bought one electric car out of 100.
Yeah.
Everyone. The thing is, everyone now has to do it.
Sure.
But I'd like to think that we have, led the way in this area in particular, and it's something that we've done ever since we started. I mean, when we first started, we had microfiber cloths, which were costing, £1.50 a cloth, and now they're like 30p each.
Yeah.
But everyone was using disposables. There was no one using them. So we were one of the first people to do that. So just in every aspect of the business, I think we've always been, this is a recycled glass. Okay. And like everything is sustainable really, in terms of our outlook. It's not just cleaning products, it's the whole way we deliver the business.
And do clients perceive that? Is that a good percent? Do clients, take that on and really embrace that?
Yeah, I think so. I think they buy into that. And I think we're working with clients now who share our values a lot more than before. Before we were much more, sort of, I suppose when you first start, you are more competitive on price maybe, but now we're very much about, this is us, these are our values, this is what we're about. Do you share that?
Yeah.
And I think, the business generally has changed a lot in the last few years, especially since COVID, that the whole like well-being, people side of things, it's a lot more human than it used to be, and less kind of corporate, like people and how you look after them, both your employees, your suppliers, just, generally the way you do business is now so important.
So important. Yeah. So my last question that we all ask most of our guests is, if you could give me as a SME, new, nowhere near the echelons of some of the bigger cleaning companies just yet. I'm sure we'll get there over time. What would be a key piece of advice that you'd give me or someone that's maybe just starting out in their cleaning business journey? Is there a particular piece of advice that you would put on the table for me to take away for today, or our viewers, of course?
I think never give up.
Definitely.
I think, it's very easy to, I'm actually going to do a post on it at some point soon, but it's very easy when you read stuff on LinkedIn. Like we generally post like everything is positive. Of
course.
But sometimes I'm like, do you know what? I've had such an awful day. I just can't bear posting this.
I had one yesterday. Yesterday.
And I'm just like, it makes it seem like the world is amazing, but actually I've just had the worst day. And actually sometimes you have like really awful days and, stuff goes wrong, and it's very easy. And there are many times when I thought, you know what? I've just had enough. I just, literally, if anyone gave me £1 for the company, I would give it away.
You must have seen some of my posts, because that's what I say all the time, when I've had a bad day, particularly.
So I think, not to give up, because it's very easy to do that, I think, and just say like, I think it's very important, like, that other people are also having a bad day, and that actually you can, wake up in the morning and start again and just pick yourself up. And, you have setbacks, and sometimes they're big setbacks. You lose, a really big customer or someone really important to the business, and you think, how am I actually going to get through this? But you do. You somehow do manage to
keep putting one foot in front of it. I always say, to myself, if I don't quit, I can't lose. If I keep going, keep putting one foot in front of the other, that's definitely a trait you've got to have within business, definitely. So I would most definitely echo that. That's gonna wrap up, Dominic. So, a super interesting chat with Dominic. Dominic, again, thank you for having us at your HQ. As always, make sure you guys like and subscribe on YouTube. If you haven't already, check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms. Make sure you subscribe and leave us a review. Dominic, thank you for having us.
Pleasure, Chris. Thanks for
coming. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.